Okay, chapter 31 is called The Photograph. The next day was most peculiar, as Mrs. Partridge would say. Phoebe arrived at school with another message, which she had found on her porch that morning. Here's the message. We never know the worth of water until the well is dry. Let me read that again. We never know the worth of water until the well is dry. Can you turn with the person next to you and discuss what do you think is the meaning of that message? We never know the worth of water until the well is dry. Go ahead. Okay, eyes back up here, everybody. Let me tell you my interpretation of that. I think what it means is because a well, you don't really see them much in the cities at all, but out in the country you do. That's where people can get water from. And it's like a big hole in the ground that you can get water from. And so you don't know the worth of water until the well is dry. It's like you don't realize how valuable that water is until it's dry and there is no more. And I guess that could kind of relate to things in life. Like sometimes you don't really appreciate the things you have until you lose them, and then you tend to appreciate them much more when you don't have it. We never know the worth of water until the well is dry. It's a clue, Phoebe said. Maybe my mother is hidden in a well. Oh, Phoebe. I walked straight into Ben when I went to my locker. That grapefruit aroma was in the air. You've got something on your face, he said. With soft, warm fingers, he rubbed the side of my face. It's probably your breakfast. I don't know what came over me. I was going to kiss him. I leaned forward, just as he turned around and slammed the door of his locker. Fail. My lips ended up pressed against the cold metal locker. Oh my gosh, so embarrassing. You're weird, Sal, he said. Kissing was thumpingly complicated. Both people had to be in the same place at the same time, and both people had to remain still so that the kiss ended up in the right place. But I was relieved that my lips ended up on the cold metal locker. I couldn't imagine what had come over me, or what might have happened if the kiss landed on Ben's mouth. It was a shivery thing to consider. I made it through the rest of my classes without losing control of my lips. Mr. Berkway sailed into class carrying our journals. Do you remember what is the last thing? It was said in a way that it kind of foreshadowed what was to come. The last thing, kind of closer to the beginning of the book, that was said about those journals. Turn to the person next to you and see if you remember what is the last thing that was said about the journals. Hi, I'm in the middle of reading my audiobook. It's just Miss Barnhart. Miss Barnhart, say hi to the class. You're probably sitting there right behind them watching as we do this. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes, the journals. So, if you recall, the last time that the journals were mentioned, it said something to the effect of, we had no idea how much trouble those journals were going to cause. Enter journals. He sailed into class carrying our journals. I had forgotten all about them. He was leaping all over the place, exclaiming, "Dynamite! Unbelievable! Incredible! He said he couldn't wait to share the journals with the class. Mary Lou Finney said, "Share with the class?" Mr. Berkway said, "Not to worry. Everyone has something magnificent to say. I haven't read through every page yet, but I wanted to share some of these passages with you right away." People were squirming all over the room. I was trying to remember what I had written. Mary Lou leaned over to me and said, "Well, I'm not worried. I wrote a special note in the front of mine, distinctly asking him not to read it. Mine was private." Mr. Berkway smiled at each nervous face. "You needn't worry," he said. "I'll change the names that you've used, and I'll fold this piece of yellow paper over the cover of whichever journal I'm reading, so you won't know whose it is." Ben asked if he could go to the bathroom. Christy said she felt sick and begged to see the nurse. Phoebe asked me to touch her forehead because she was pretty sure she had a fever. Usually Mr. Berkway would let people go to the bathroom or to the nurse, but this time he said, "Let's not malinger." Remember that word malinger? This is the one that Phoebe's dad made her look up, which was pretending to be sick in order to get out of something. Let's not malinger. He picked up a journal, slipping the yellow paper over it before anyone had a chance to examine the cover for clues as to its author's identity. Everyone took a deep breath. You could see people poised nervously, waiting as tensely as if Mr. Berkway was going to announce someone's execution. Mr. Berkway read, "I think that Betty," he changed the name, you could tell, because there's no Betty in our school, "will go to hell. Because she always takes the Lord's name in vain. She says God every 5 seconds. Mary Lou Finney was turning purple. "Who wrote that?" she said. "Did you, Christy?" "I'll bet you did." Christy stared down at her desk. "I do not say God every 5 seconds. I do not. And I am not going to hell. Omnipotent. That's what I say now. I say omnipotent and Alpha and Omega." Mr. Berkway was desperately trying to explain that what he'd enjoyed about the passage. He said that most of us are not aware that we may be using words such as God that offend other people. Mary Lou leaned over to me and said, "Is he serious? Does he actually really and truly believe that beef-brained Christy is troubled by me saying God, which I do not, by the way, say anymore anyway?" Christy wore a pious look as if God himself had just come down from heaven to sit on her desk. Mr. Berkway quickly selected another journal. He read, "Linda," there was no Linda in our class either, "is my best friend. I tell her just about everything, and she tells me everything. Even things I do not want to know, like what she ate for breakfast and what her father wears to bed and how much her new sweater costs. Sometimes things like that are just not interesting." Mr. Berkway liked this passage because it showed that even though someone might be our best friend, he or she could still drive us crazy. Beth Ann turned all the way around in her seat and sent wicked eyebrow messages to Mary Lou. It's kind of funny because even though Mr. Berkway is covering the journals and changing the names, they know exactly who the journals are. He's not helping at all. Mr. Berkway flipped ahead in the same journal to another passage. He read, "I think Jeremiah is pig-headed. His skin is always pink, and his hair is always clean and shiny, but he's really a jerk." I thought Mary Lou Finney was going to fall out of her chair. Alex was bright, bright pink. He looked at Mary Lou as if she had recently plunged a red-hot stake into his heart. Mary Lou said, No, it isn't what you think. Mr. Berkway liked this passage because it showed conflicting feelings about someone. "I'll say it does," Alex said. Oh, remember? Those are the two that went on the date together. Remember, Phoebe said, Mary Lou's on a date. She's on a date with Alex. Mm-hmm. The bell rang. First, you could hear sighs of relief from people whose journals had not been read. And then people started talking a mile a minute. Hey, Mary Lou, look at Alex's pink skin. And hey, Mary Lou, what does Beth Ann's father wear to bed?